Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to make your C2 Corvette doors fit your car, whether it's a coupe or a convertible. We're going to get into some of the ways you can shim them, bend the doors, or tweak the door tops to get them to fit your coupe roof. So be sure to stick around. I'm fixing the bird cage on this 63 split window. I just replaced the rockers. They had some crash damage and some rust. And now I need to replace the gutters and drip rails that go along the insides of the door. But before I do that, I need to get these doors to fit better. If you're not familiar with the project, check out some of the earlier videos. This bird cage does not belong to the doors, and neither does that rear top. This car was parted out to save a 63 Z06, and we need to get these parts to fit better. So this door could have been in an accident, but you can see that it's low here. If you're not familiar with the construction on these cars, there is a fiberglass bonding strip that rivets. That's what all these holes are for. Rivets on top of this, and then the roof skin will glue to that. They glued fiberglass to fiberglass, and they riveted fiberglass to steel. That was their approach, and because of that, there has to be a gap here because they're going to build that up. We're going to build that up with different fiberglass panels, and we want this to be even the whole way across. But now you can see we get to the front. The steel is taller than the fiberglass. That's a problem on coupes. Convertibles, you're not going to have that issue. All you care about in a convertible is getting your vent window to line up with the windshield, and that's adjustable. There are bolts that you can loosen, and you can rock it forward, you can tip it back, and you can slide it forwards and backwards. So that's pretty easy on convertibles. Coupes are a different story. 63s especially had problems with this, and I think that's what we're running into here. So what we need to do is, well, there's several approaches you can take. In this case, I know kind of what we need to do. We need to first bend this door top. I'm pretty sure this door was in a car that was wrecked. So we need to manipulate this. And if you look into this, GM originally worked on these doors a lot to try to get them to fit bird cages. But if you can see, if I pull this out a little bit, and if I can pull this forward, it's a little harder to pull it forward. If I can pull it out and forward, it comes up. Just if you think of like a triangle, if you tip it up, it's going to get taller when you go like this. We don't need much, we just need a little bit. You can cheat it with shims as well, but first I like to get the door top lining up with the bird cage the best I can. We need to at least get it a little bit closer. You really can't fix one this bad with shims alone. But I have an example set up over here of different techniques to shim. I have these doors mounted already, and whenever I mount them up, I like to use 2 bolts per hinge. Generally, they take 12 total. I use the center ones. That makes it easier to install because you're gonna have to take these doors on and off when you're building a bird cage or a body a lot. These doors are empty, so there's not a lot of weight to them, so that's fine. Whenever I mount these myself, I like to use, I just have a bunch of wood shims that like you'd use for a door frame. What I like to do is put this in the door jamb with the door closed. I tap on it with a mallet to get it where I want it, and then I lock the bolts down. So I have my porter power out, and if you're not familiar with these, you can get them at Harbor Freight. I think this one's from Summit, but all it is just hydraulics. And you can, if the thing is closed, it just gives you a lot of power out of this ram. What I like to do before I get the porta power in place is I try to mock up my pushing scenario. So I have the door latched, and I figured out that I can probably push on this edge either with this, or I'll get the big rubber pad and put on here. I have it hooked into a slot in the frame, and I kind of mocked up how I want to push. We're trying to push forward and out. I may have to go a little more that way, but we're kind of running out of extensions. So we'll figure out kind of where it needs to fit, and then we'll introduce the ram, and then we'll start pushing on this guy. All right, so we have our setup here, and this hopefully should, if I can see out of my glasses, this hopefully should work. I always wear safety glasses because it feels like I need them. So I've already checked, and we're not pushing on the bird cage, which is important. And we're gonna go further than we need to. We might need to give it a little shock to tell it this is your home. Metal has a memory, and if it once was in this spot, it should remember. So I didn't bolt the back of the bird cage down. That's why we're moving so much. All right, it helps to have the bird cage bolted down. Yeah, now we're just pushing the door. So we're gonna go further than we have to. Already that's looking a little better. Try it again. We're not marring anything up. That's important to check. So before I put the scale on this, okay, the door is taller. It's about level or as tall as the roof. So we've come up about 1/10 or so. Now the top of the door is about touching in the back, which is one of the things that tells us that this door needs to shift forward. So we're just gonna keep on pushing this guy. Okay, well that one made progress. I think I started talking to it and it started listening. Okay, now we're finally getting to the point where we're higher than the roof. We're still touching back here a little bit. I'm gonna do it once more, and then I think we're about there. That's looking really good actually. If you're in a situation where you don't need to get a whole lot out of it, say like in this case, if you pretend that this is the roof and not the bird cage, you can see that it's just a little bit high here. What we can do is open the door. You can see it's grabbing because something doesn't fit right. What we can do is take our wide jaw locking pliers and grab the top of the door. And I don't have them adjusted quite right, but you can lock them on the door and you can carefully tip this up. And again, like the construction on the entire car, is the door structure is steel and it has a flange that comes out. It's right, you can just barely make it out. It's right here. There's a bonding strip that was riveted to that, and here's a rivet here. And then the door skin glues on top of that. So what you can do is tweak up on the steel just a little bit, and that will bring the rest of the fiberglass with it, because the fiberglass really is only glued kind of over here and right here. And this just kind of is along for the ride. So if you bring this up or down, you can steer the door and get the door to fit the top of the car. I do that to finish a car off where it needs to be bent up. So this is where it's extremely thick. I'm just gonna manipulate it. A little bit. There may be some cracking sounds when you do that. That's okay. So that brought that area up a little bit. Okay, so that's not perfect. But for right now, the stage that I'm in, that's pretty good. I played around with the driver's side a little bit more. When I had it under tension, I put a wood block here and tapped it with a hammer, and that really made a big difference. You can see that this is higher than this, which is what we want, and it's pretty uniform the whole way across the top. So I think that fixed our issue. We have a good looking gap here. It's parallel. This surface is parallel with this. There's a good gap here, and it's pretty good here as well. We may have to shim the door to get the back out a little bit, or it may need played around with a little bit, but for right now, that looks really good. So if you're working on a coupe or a convertible, you're probably gonna need to shim the door at some point. Corvettes are kind of unique that the hinges are solid mounted to the car and the door is purely what gets shimmed. Sometimes, like I know in the Camaro, you can adjust part of it in the door, part of it on the hinge. It's a little different on these cars. And some of the shims you may encounter, this is the one that you buy. It's just one big solid shim. And we can just pretend that this is the upper hinge and this is the lower. You have one shim, that's if you need to steer the whole door. So say if you needed to tip the bottom of the door out or tip the top of the door out, you can do that. Just like if you have this lid, it's flat here, you put a shim in there and it's gonna tip up or tip this way, but it's gonna be flat. And it doesn't matter what bolts you put in here, it's all gonna steer the same. So now I've also seen double shims where it's kind of like a wishbone looking piece where it's just basically this piece here with a big slot in it that you slide in. Those ones, again, are very similar. You can steer the door similar to these. So for this one, we're just gonna stack two up just for the sake of conversation. I've also seen 4 of these in one door, and it was an original door that had never been taken apart. So they used a lot of them originally. For our next example, let's say you wanna steer the back of the door out. Say the door is hitting the bird cage and it needs to come out, or it's hitting the roof. What we're gonna do to steer the top of the door out is put shims here, the back hole on our top door hinge. And whenever you do this, obviously you have to put a bolt here, but what you're gonna wanna do is put some bolts here. If you would tighten this bolt the whole way down first, you would lock the door in a raised position. And if you tighten the ones on the end, you wouldn't get a whole lot of tip out of the door. What I do is I get all the bolts in place just so that they're holding the door in place and these shims don't fall out. Then I'll tighten the furthest one away down. And you can get it snug or you can get it tight, it doesn't matter. What that'll do is that'll give you the maximum tip out of the door because you're sucking this corner down. And then I'll jump to these top ones, which will pull it down a little bit more. And then I'll go to the ones over the shim. And that'll kind of give you a funky shape. And in a case where you're steering with this many shims here, you're probably gonna need to put like one of those little wishbones in here or something to help counteract that. So that way, you know, this isn't the only one touching in free space. But they use these originally. Don't be afraid to use shims. But you can steer your door in different ways. And if you tighten bolts down in different ways, you can try it, you'll get different effects. So I like to take notes on shims. I tape them together. I mark on the hinge, whatever you need to do to tell you that these shims go here or wherever, just to keep it consistent. Because the more consistent you are, the better results you have and the less you'll be fighting these doors, which can often fight. On the passenger side, you can see the door sunken in a little bit and it really sinks the higher we go. Also, the whole door top is low. And the biggest problem is that we're dragging here on the gutter. That's a problem. So I think the whole issue here is the door needs to come up a little bit. So I'm going to loosen it and we're gonna lift the door up, adjust the striker and see, I may even take the striker off just to see if we can get this door to fit the opening any better before we start twisting stuff. All right, so I'm gonna start off the door closed. I wanna raise the back up. So I'm gonna put my little block in here, my tapered wedge. Put a little pressure on it. Then we'll break all 4 bolts loose. Now we'll open it, get it past the striker. Lift that back up. And I'm gonna need to pick probably the front up a little bit, it fell. So now we'll just snug this up. So now I need to adjust the striker as well. But we're not rubbing, which is good. striker needs to come out. Goes all the way in. I'll pull it out a little bit. Okay, that's better. That's a lot better, actually. So by bringing the back of the door up, we were able to get a lot of this to fit a lot better. So the back of the door is still low and it's too far in here. So we're gonna try to push the back out a little bit, maybe the whole top of the door, just because this wouldn't hurt to pull out as well, because this has a bit of a swoop to it. We're gonna manipulate this a little bit. Worst comes to worst, we're just gonna throw a shim in it and steer the top of the door out. But first, we're just gonna try to manipulate that. So from the inside, what you wanna look for if you're doing a coupe is this gap up here should be a little tight. That's probably too tight down here. You want it to be tight, and then it's about the same gap here as it is here. But you can see right away, we're colliding right up in here. So we know the door top could afford to go out, which as we go out, that fixes this problem. And we really can't go forward a whole lot because we're tight here. So I think the door needs to go up a little bit and the whole door might need to come back just a hair. This opening is actually kind of tight over here. So we're gonna play around with this and try to get this to fit a little better. Whenever we put our new gutters in, we can leave some more space up front to get this to fit if that's a problem. But everything was done a little differently. All right, so I have the door latched, I have the ram set up, push on the back of the door. We're gonna put a little tension on it. And right away I can see we're moving in the right direction. Now I'm gonna try to lock that in a little bit. Sometimes a little shock will help it stay, and it needs more than that. Okay, I like that. We're gonna leave it right there. The back is about level. Back of the door top is about level with the bird cage. Before it was sunken way in. Now it's about even. What you want to do too is open and close your doors. A couple times, because that door top is going to relax. So if you remember where we started, the door top was low the whole way around, then we brought the back of the door up. That got us close, but we were still low here. And we were still having kind of a goofy gap here as well as on the top. But now, by pushing just in this corner, and I made sure I pounded with the wood block in nice strong areas to spread out the load so I didn't, put a bunch of dents in the door. You can see it's still a little close here, but that's way better. We were able to get material in here. I'll probably have to pull it out just a hair more, but I might be able to do that with a shim even. But you can see the whole way around here, we have a nice gap across here, and now that brought this door up to the windshield frame. Before this was low. So by pushing here, that brought everything around, and now we have a nice gap. You can see we have a uniform gap the whole way through there. That's really what we want. And something tells me that this should be pushed forward a hair, judging by the inside, but the outside looks perfectly parallel. I don't think I'm gonna mess with that. I think we're gonna make that adjustment with the gutter. We're no longer crashing here like we were. The door closes. It's a little tight here, so what I'm probably gonna do is cheat the gutter a little bit this way whenever I install it, and I may have to adjust the front. But guys, this is way better. You can see before I had to slam the door, because we were pushing through this, and now it just comes kind of where it needs to. So that's a quick and dirty way to adjust doors. And again, this is not the final install. People always ask, do I drill holes in the door hinge into the door for alignment purposes? My answer is no, because I'm not getting these cars to completion. Once the guy who works on it after me gets all the gaps perfect and he likes the fit on everything, everything's primed, and he's taking it apart to paint it and he wants to drill holes, to me, that's the time. But for me sitting here in the rough stage, the doors are going to be adjusted a couple more times from here on out because things are going to move. It fits the birdcage well, but there's also a number of different shim combinations and other combinations that I could do to make it fit the birdcage, and it would still fit okay. We want to get it as close as we can here, but when we put the roof on, the roof could be a little wide or could be a little narrow, so we may have to adjust the door tops, and we may have to adjust areas like this to make more clearance. So that's my answer. I don't work on them long enough to get to that stage. If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. If you want to, do that for your painting stage, I just recommend holding off till you get to some more of the final assembly stages where this hardly looks like a car. So that's going to do it for this. Hopefully that helped. Those are a couple of my tricks. You've seen me put on doors dozens of times, but I've never sat down and talked about it because I've never had a good example like this car to really break down how to get doors, specifically coupe doors, to fit. And some people have told me that this is not how you're supposed to do it, but they also haven't built cars like this. And again, if this door was stored in a funny way up in somebody's attic, laying face down with weight on it, or someone had it leaning where there was weight on this door top, it's going to bend the top of the door. So you just have to bend it back. And again, they did crazy things to get cars to fit back in the days. So we're kind of undoing some of that or redoing some of that. So it's just nature of the beast. They fit well. I think they both fit tight. If you can see the gaps on that door over there, it's nice and tight in the opening and it's pretty parallel. That's about how it's supposed to be. So this car is a very nice car. It's a good birdcage. So I'm going to end it off here for the video, but now I'm going to start taking apart the gutters and working on next week's video because we need to fix some of this damage. Yeah, that's not good. We need to fix this damage. So I'm going to get the gutters off so that way we can replace this, and I'll show you my new windshield checking gauge thing. So hopefully that helped. And I think we improved this birdcage considerably. Let's give you one last shot of the door tops here to show you how far we've come. That's about what you want to see. But that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Also leave a comment down below. What do you think about these steps? What have you done to make doors fit? And would you attempt something like this on your own? Hopefully this helps. I've had a lot of people ask how I do this, and I just so happen to have the opportunity to show you. So in the next video, we're going to be jumping into some more birdcage work, and I have a lot of work to do. So I'll catch you guys later.